Hi, everyone. I'm Alex from Openfield. We are about 4 weeks into our process together, and I want to share some exciting solution validation survey results with you. Just to recap where we are, about 4 weeks ago, you came to us with an already validated problem around differentiating instruction for K 12 teachers. A pretty clear challenge that needs a solution. And so we met and we basically had this ideation workshop where we helped you to sharpen the concepts you had already been thinking through. We landed on 3 solution concepts that each took a different strategic approach to solving that problem. On top of that, and I think this is probably the most important piece of the conversation we talked about how to evaluate those concepts. And we agreed there was going to be 2 key dimensions in the survey that we ran. The first being solution fit, which measures alignment with the problem, workflow integration and uniqueness, and then viability, which measures whether people would actually use it and whether they'd pay for it. We said both dimensions need to score at least a 3.0 for the concept to pass. We also talked about adding a direct preference share question where we ask users, or ask respondents rather, imagine all 3 of these are available. They're all the same price. Which one would you pick? So you set the bar. We deployed the survey to teachers. We tested it with 284 complete responses between late October and early November. Let's just dive into what we found. Before I go any further, though, let me just take a step back and say everything you're seeing here is fake data. We're just doing this to show you the format. None of this is real research, but if this were your report, let's show you what you'd be looking at. The first thing you'd see up top is the executive dashboard. So this is designed to give decision makers the answer in about 60 seconds. And here's your snapshot. We tested 3 concepts with 284 teachers over about 3 weeks in late October. And here's the punchline. We have one clear winner. Concept A, which we call diff engine, passed both the solution fit threshold and the viability threshold. It also, on top of that, won the preference share vote with 51% choosing it over the other 2. Both of the other 2 concepts failed to meet all of those thresholds. And the key thing here that I'll name is what makes this a clear winner is that the concept with the highest composite score is also the one that won the preference share vote. So when those 2 things align, the data is unambiguous enough that you can move forward strategically without even having to have a detailed conversation about which factors to weigh, because all of them are lining up in favor of this one idea. Now, if you scroll down, we give you the strategic takeaway, which in this case is that we should go ahead and move diff engine to MVP development. We have some signals from 2 places that we should prioritize early career teachers with English and ELA positioning. The 2 signals are first, one that came from you all. You had some indication in your customer data that basically a hunch at this stage that this might be the right niche for this sort of solution. Further, we have a bit of an indication in the data itself. Now, we, as you remember, didn't run a large enough survey that could support like really detailed segmentation based on discipline. So we didn't run any like formal statistical testing for significance or anything like that. But we do have, just like at a descriptive level, some small indications that that might be a market or a niche in the market that's more enthusiastic. Now, for all respondents, however, we do have a recommendation that we should build in some trust and transparency features around how AI is used due to what we see in the qualitative feedback around some concerns about how AI accuracy would be ensured, how people could trust the outputs, et cetera, and some signals from basically how differently people respond based on their exposure to and attitudes about tech and AI more generally. Now, let's just go ahead and look through what we actually tested. Now, you all know this because you helped work through this workshop with me, but you never know who this report is going to be shown to. And often, stakeholders may or may not be familiar with what has been evaluated in these surveys. So we quickly go through these things in the report. Concept A is the AI assistant that auto-generates 3-leveled versions of lessons. Concept B is the curated library of pre-made materials. Concept C is that dashboard with the real-time dashboard with student tracking. Then we scroll down, we get to the complete rankings. And this table here shows all 3 concepts with their scores broken down. So you can see solution fit is the average of 3 components: alignment with need, workflow fit, and uniqueness. Viability, on the other hand, is 2 signals: likelihood to use and willingness to pay. We'll look at why each one passed or failed. So we already saw concept A passes. Concept B does pass on solution fit, 3.12, but it only hits 2.83 on viability, which fails. Now, the issue here was weak willingness to pay. The signal there was relatively low, and also only 27% of respondents chose it in the preference vote. So basically, teachers, based on that and what we see in the qualitative feedback, saw it as effectively just another teachers pay teachers, but with a subscription fee. Concept C failed both dimensions. Too low on solution fit, too low on viability. But the real killer here was workflow fit. Teachers worried it would turn me into like more of a dashboard monitor than a teacher. Too much behavior change. So this is the power of the validation approach, because you can see like not just that a concept failed, but where and why it did, which prevents you from making an expensive mistake and building something that is tempting but has a fatal flaw. Now, we also do deep dives on the winners. So let's briefly look at concept A, since that's what our recommendation is. You've already seen the headline scores here up top, but we break down what's driving these scores. So alignment with needs scored a 4.2, workflow fit a 4.1, uniqueness was a 3.3. So like differentiated, but not revolutionary, which is actually fine, because that's why we have, for these dimensions, that's why we have a number of questions and variables that go into the final score, because you need to solve the problem, but there's different things that we might weigh differently depending on the idea, depending on the market, et cetera. And like multiple things can be true at once. So like alignment and workflow fit are strong, uniqueness not quite as strong, but all things together meets the threshold that we would consider developing. Now, the qualitative feedback here shows what teachers are actually saying. We use statistical topic modeling in the background, sort of on the front end, to identify the most common themes. Then we pull out representative quotes. The top theme here is about time savings without quality loss. We would say this would save me hours per week. If AI could just do the heavy lifting, that's a game changer. The second theme was about real classroom diversity. The third theme, I'll flag for you really specifically, because it was about AI accuracy. I mentioned this earlier. 23% of responses mentioned worrying about whether the AI would create appropriate and accurate content. This tells you, what do you need to de-risk for your MVP? Well, the application of how AI looks and feels. So then we show you the distributions. Averages hide a lot of things sometimes. So you want to be able to see like, what does the actual curve look like? For alignment with need, 80% of teachers rated it as very or strongly aligned. So as you can see here, like we're very skewed toward the positive. We're not just like, averaging out extremes and landing in the middle. There's genuine concentration in the positive end. You'll see a similar sort of curve for likelihood to use as well. We also offer some segment analysis in the deep dive. Who loves this most? So we talked about this briefly, but early career teachers, you'll see a bump above average, 0.4 and 0.2. English and ELA teachers, you'll also see a bump above average in preference share and alignment with need. We also, from there, if we scroll down, also do a deep dive on the failing concept. So in this case, concept C failed. And I think it's important to look at these deep dives, because understanding failure is often just as valuable as understanding success. Concept C had the highest uniqueness score. So it had, I believe, a 3.8, but it still came in last place, because innovation without workflow compatibility is going to fail. And that workflow fit of 2.4 showed that teachers are worried it would distract them from teaching. The qualitative feedback backs that up. The strategic lesson here is that like uniqueness alone doesn't necessarily drive adoption. Teachers value things that fit within their workflow and solve their problems. Scroll down a bit more, we see the preference share analysis. As you can see here, 51% of respondents chose concept A, which we already talked about. But also, if we look across these segments, we break it out and say, look, across years of teaching experience, across discipline, across AI attitudes and familiarity, concept A wins across all those segments. That might not be true for other problems or concepts, I should say, that we test. But in this case, a lot of signals pointing to A. Finally, we end with some concrete next steps. So immediate, medium term, and what not to do. Really, the goal here is that you have not just these things, but then finally also some success metrics, and that in a big picture way, you have a roadmap, right? You have a sense of what the survey says, you have a narrative you can use to communicate that with the team, and you have answers to the questions that you came to us with. Let us know if you want to talk more.